As most of y'all know, I'm a pretty much a wrestling historian, and I just seen a couple of videos. When not watching boxing videos, I'm watching wrestling videos, and I've seen a couple of videos that I'm just looking like people are really buying into this because they don't respect the history of title belts in wrestling. They want to give credit to hot promotions and this, that, and the third, but they don't give the just due to certain titles that deserve a certain amount of respect when they see them, and they don't know the history behind them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name the top 5 most prestigious wrestling titles, bar none, in professional wrestling. Some are active, others aren't. I'm going to tell you the ones that aren't and why, but let's just go ahead and start this countdown. Now, before I start, I know I'm going to hear some backlash from a few people. That's okay. That's cool. You can argue me up and down. This is what it is as a historian. But at number 5, as you see, I have the Intercontinental title. The Intercontinental title was first brought along by a mysterious match, so-called wrestled by Pat Patterson, who at the time was the North American champion for the WWF. All right. Before the WWF, there was a WWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And he beat the South American champion at the time and formed the Intercontinental Championship. And this championship was made in 1979. And before y'all ask, no, I'm not looking at anything. Everything that I'm giving y'all right now is just off the top of my head. Every single title, every single thing said about these titles will be off the top of my head. This title brings back a lot of memories to me. The person that I admired the most was one Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, especially when he won it at WrestleMania 3 against Randy Savage in what is called probably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. Debatable nowadays, but still, that match still stands the test of time. If you think about it, look at the number of WrestleManias since then, and that match still sticks out to a lot of people. Arguably, the greatest champion could be Chris Jericho, the Macho Man himself, and I would say the Honky Tonk Man, probably the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Those would be my top 4. So if anybody were to say, hey, this person is the greatest Intercontinental Champion out of those 4, I would have no arguments. But this belt right here ranks as my top 5 in prestige as far as championship titles. All right, at number 4, you have one of my favorite belts, especially growing up. Right here, you have the United States title. Now, you may see the WWE, but the reason you're seeing the WWE title is because you're not seeing the WCW United States Championship. It's basically a form of that belt. And not only is that a form of this belt, but the original belt was the NWA title held by the greats like the Sheik, Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat. This is back in the NWA days. And this belt came along in 1975, which predated the Intercontinental Championship. So if you really do your history on these titles, you will see why I have this ranked at number 4 above the Intercontinental Championships. Wrestlers like Lex Luger made that NWA United States Championship so prestigious. Barry Windham, Magnum TA, Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard and Magnum TA had one of the most brutal cage matches of all time for this particular title. Greg the Hammer Valentine. Even in the WCW days, you had Sting carrying this title. You had Rick Rude. Ricky Steamboat carried this title for a bit. The late Eddie Guerrero. There are so many notable names that carried this United States Championship. Even in the WWE days, you had, your John Cena's, who came with his own variation with it. You had your Big Shows. Got a little lazy with a couple of people, I think with like MVP and John Cena, but that does not take away the prestige that this title has carried. And like I said, this belt has been around, predated some of the world titles that but this belt has been around since 1975, and it carries its prestige well, and that's why I have this belt ranked number 4. All right, at the number 3 spot, we have the IWGP World Heavyweight title. If you don't know what IWGP means, it's International Wrestling Grand Prix. All right, some of the most notable names to carry this, of course, is Antonio Inoki. I think he carried it one time. My favorite IWGP champion of all time, Tetsuya Fujinami. Fujinami is like one of my greatest Japanese wrestlers. If you've never heard of him, you need to do your research on him. He once defeated Ric Flair for the NWA title. The Great Muta, that's another person that carried it. Big Van Vader, Scott Norton. He was huge in Japan before he came stateside and joined the NWO back in his WCW days. Predated, well, came after his time with Ice Train when they formed that tag team in WCW. Masahiro Chono, another great champion. Tenzan, current champion, Okada right now. He's having one of the best reigns ever. And of course, you've seen the name on the belt, Tanahashi, great IWGP champion. Brock Lesnar, AJ Styles. This is one of the most prestigious world titles out there, bar none. And historically, actually. So if you haven't known about this title, I suggest do your research. All right, this is going to break a couple of hearts right here. This is my number 2 title, WWE title, established in 1963. It predates the IWGP title for almost about 20 years. The IWGP title didn't come around to 1987. And I pretty much don't have to tell you all who's held the WWE title. You have names like Hulk Hogan. You have names like Billy Graham, Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino. You know, Bruno held it in the WWF days, so did Bob Backlund. You know, you got guys like the Iron Sheik, the immortal Hulk Hogan. You know, that's who a lot of people may look and, you know, distinguish this title with. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. You know, so many names has held this title over the years, and it is hands down the second most prestigious title ever. I mean, it is currently the title. You know, there's no shadow of a doubt about it. If you are the WWE champion, you are probably the most prestigious name in the business. You're the biggest name in the business, being the WWE champion. But I have this belt at number 2 for that reason, and I don't think there is much debate about it right now. There is zero debate about it right now. It is that prestigious. And here we have it. Made in 1948, the most prestigious title ever, the NWA World Championship. Now, I was tempted to use Big Gold because that is the title I grew up watching Ric Flair with. That was the title that I grew up watching Dusty Rhodes with. You know, Sting, Steamboat. You know, the NWA title is without a shadow of a doubt the most prestigious title in wrestling history. And it's still around today, being defended mostly in the United States. It had a spat in Japan like twice. Once in the early 90s, I think Masahiro Chono won it in a tournament against the Great Muta, which was a great tournament. It involved a whole bunch of WCW and New Japan talent at that time. And most recently, it was being defended in Japan in the mid 2000 time frame, but now now it's being defended back stateside. I think the champion, he's probably like 54 years old. The NWA was just purchased by Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins fame. I know he tried to do his TNA thing, but something went wrong with that. But this is hands down the most prestigious title ever in professional wrestling. Ever. It is the grandfather of the WWE title, the grandfather of the WCW title. If you wonder why I didn't put the WCW title on, it's because this belt was really the WCW title. It came off of that lineage. Just the majority of the WCW titles came off of NWA lineage. That's why this belt is number 1, and it is the most prestigious title ever in wrestling history. There's a couple of other belts that I didn't get to in this video, ECW, AWA, couple of other promotions, but I will in a separate video. But these are the top 5 most prestigious titles in wrestling. I holla.